The room was drenched in morning light, pale as cream, soft as the skin of a ripe fruit. Leia lay half-reclined at her chaise longue, her robe open at the throat, her gaze fixed upon the boy who stood by the window, Chéri, tall, exquisitely built, the embodiment of careless youth. He was toying with her pearl necklace, running the cool beads through his fingers with a sensual indifference that made her both smile and wince. For 6 years he had been her lover, not merely her plaything, but her creation. She had sculpted his gestures, his silences, his very vanity. She had taught him the art of pleasure as one teaches a language, slowly, through repetition and tenderness. In return, he had given her what she no longer found elsewhere, the illusion of youth reflected in another's eyes. He called her my old Leia, with a teasing affection that she accepted as both wound and caress. When he touched her, she felt both young and ancient. When he left her side, she listened for his absence as one listens for a clock that has stopped ticking. Around them, Paris glittered with post-war ennui, a world of courtesans, faded salons, men who had lost their fortunes, and women who had survived by their charm. Leia's house, with its pale curtains and the faint scent of jasmine, was a sanctuary of the past, where love still obeyed its old rituals. "Chéri," she said lazily, "come here. You look as though you were already thinking of leaving." He came, obedient yet distracted, and pressed his lips to her hair. His touch was light, too light. Outside, a bird sang. The day was beginning. But for Leia, the morning was always tinged with the melancholy of endings. She sensed beneath Chéri's laughter a restlessness she dared not name, the slow, inevitable rebellion of youth against love that has given it everything. When he looked at her now, she sometimes saw the shadow of another woman in his eyes, a woman she did not yet know, but whose presence was already there, waiting, like a scent that lingers before the flower blooms. Leia smiled, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached for his. The first crack appeared not with a quarrel, but with a silence. One afternoon, as Leia adjusted her earrings before the mirror, Chéri sat behind her, listless, staring at the floor. "Something on your mind?" she asked, feigning indifference. He shrugged. "Nothing." But there was something, a vague, growing discomfort, the sense that his life was being lived within her shadow. He adored her, yes, but she filled every corner of his world. Her laughter dictated his moods. Her approval defined his worth. The charm of captivity was wearing thin. Leia, who had once delighted in his boyish dependence, began to see in it the seeds of loss. She felt him slipping, not yet in action, but in attention. His glances wandered toward the door, the window, the imagined horizon beyond her walls. Then came the news. Edmé, the daughter of Charlotte Pilot, Leia's old friend and rival, was to marry Chéri. The arrangement, as practical as it was absurd, was presented to him as a fait accompli. Chéri laughed when he first heard. Me? Married? To that child? But Charlotte's tone was firm. "You've had your fun, my dear. Leia is nearly 50. It's time you thought of your future." The words, though cruel, struck him not as false, but as inevitable. That evening, he told Leia, awkwardly, without conviction. She listened in silence, her fingers tracing the embroidery of her robe. When he finished, she said only, "So it is decided." He tried to protest, to assure her of his love, but her calm frightened him more than anger would have. She kissed him, tenderly, almost maternally, and said, "You must go through with it, Chéri. You are too young to belong to anyone." The next weeks passed in a daze. He went through the motions of engagement, dinners, congratulations, all the while haunted by Leia's composure. She seemed untouched, radiant even, as if freed from something heavy. But one night, when he came to her for what might be the last time, she took him in her arms with a hunger that was almost desperation. "Remember this," she whispered against his neck. "When you find yourself in her bed, remember how you once belonged entirely." He left at dawn, the sky pale as her face. The wedding took place under a sky too blue, too indifferent. The guests murmured compliments, glasses clinked, and Edmé smiled her gentle, obedient smile. Chéri moved through the ceremony as one might move through a dream, distant, exquisite, and faintly absurd. At first, married life was merely dull. Edmé, graceful and submissive, adored him. Her youth should have pleased him, but it unsettled him instead. Her body was soft, unformed, without the knowing touch Leia possessed. Her innocence bored him. Her affection embarrassed him. He began to visit Leia's house again under the pretext of business with his mother, but Leia was gone, vanished, leaving only a note and a lingering scent of violets. "Do not look for me," she had written. "The past deserves its own death." He searched anyway, desperate, humiliated by his own need. No one knew where she had gone. He imagined her in the south of France, by the sea, her skin darkened by the sun, her eyes turned away from Paris and from him. Her absence filled him more completely than her presence ever had. He could not eat, could not sleep. Nights became an ache of memory, her laughter echoing in his mind, her perfume haunting his pillow. One evening, he found one of her old slippers beneath the bed. He held it to his face, inhaling the faint trace of her skin, and wept, not for love, but for the unbearable loss of himself within her. Edmé watched him quietly, her face pale, her lips pressed in patience. She did not ask questions. She knew that she was competing with a ghost. Chéri began to wander the streets at night, searching for something, a voice, a shadow, a sign of Leia. But Paris had already swallowed her, as it swallows all who dare to love too long. He realized finally that she had done what he could not. She had let go. And that knowledge destroyed him more completely than her departure. Months passed. Chéri and Edmé moved into a new house, modern, bare, full of light that made him uneasy. The silence between them was courteous, polished, unbearable. He filled it with trivialities, dinners, friends, meaningless flirtations, but nothing pierced the fog of memory. Even the laughter of others seemed to echo Leia's voice, mocking him gently from somewhere beyond time. He saw her once, by accident, a brief glimpse at the opera, a woman in a distant box, her hair silver, her body still graceful but transformed by peace. She was laughing, surrounded by people he did not know. For a moment he doubted. Was it really her? When she turned, their eyes met. Hers held no surprise, no pain, only recognition and release. She inclined her head slightly, a gesture of farewell that sealed what words never could. He left before the final act. That night he told Edmé he would travel for a while. He said, "I need air. I can't breathe here." She nodded. She had stopped asking long ago. In the countryside, he tried to find solace in solitude, but every landscape reminded him of her. The scent of jasmine, the softness of dusk, the warmth of an armchair, all belonged to Leia. He realized that she had not simply been his lover, she had been the texture of his world. He began writing letters to her, unsent, unfinished. They were not confessions, but conversations with the void. One began, "Are you happy?" Another was, "Have you forgotten me?" Each ended the same way. "If you are at peace, then I suppose I should be too."
But peace never came. The more he tried to escape her, the more he felt her everywhere, in the mirror's reflection, in the curve of a stranger's neck, in the ghost of his own youth.
Spring returned to Paris, gentle and cruel. Chéri came back as well, thinner, quieter, the sheen of arrogance replaced by something softer, resignation. He went to his mother's house, now filled with new faces, new stories, new amusements. The old world of courtesans and golden lovers was vanishing, replaced by younger, brasher generations. He felt like a survivor of a kingdom that no longer existed. One afternoon, he walked past Lea's old home. It stood empty, its shutters closed, its garden wild with neglect. He leaned against the gate, listening to the silence. The jasmine had died, but the air still carried its ghostly sweetness. He thought of her laughter, her hands, the curve of her shoulder in morning light, and then he thought of what she had taught him, that beauty fades, pleasure vanishes, but tenderness, once felt, leaves an indelible mark. A calm settled over him, quiet and strange. He no longer desired her, nor pitied himself. What he felt was something closer to gratitude. That night, he returned home to Edmé. She was sitting by the fire reading. When she looked up, her eyes met his without question. He sat beside her, and for the first time, touched her hand without longing for another's. Outside, spring rain began to fall, slow, patient, endless. Lea's memory remained, but it no longer burned. It glowed instead, like the final light before evening. And Chéri, who had lived only for pleasure, at last began to understand love, not as possession, but as the grace of letting go.